Hello and welcome back to Inside the Ropes with Coach Mario. Coach Mario, owner and head coach of Warriors Pride Boxing Academy here in Miami, Florida. Well, guys, we're going to tackle hard-hitting issues here today in the world of boxing and beyond. Today, we're diving into a topic that's been making waves across all sports, the inclusion of transgender athletes in female competitions. This isn't just about boxing, it's about fairness, safety, and the future of women's sports. So let's get into it. First, let's understand the biological and physical differences between a man and a woman, a biological man and a biological woman. Let me rephrase that, all right? Make sure there's no doubt and there's no confusion here, all right? So, the difference between male and female athletes. Science tells us that biological males, on average, have more muscle mass, greater bone density, and a higher cardiovascular capacity than their female counterparts. These aren't small differences. They are significant factors that can give biological males an undeniable advantage in sports even after they transition. Even after transitioning and undergoing hormone therapy, these physical advantages don't just disappear. Muscle memory, bone density, and years of testosterone exposure mean that even a transgender woman has undergone hormone therapy can still have a competitive edge over biological females. This is where the debate about fairness really heats up. And I'm talking about this again on my previous episode. I was just generalizing, just telling you a small rant about how I felt about the Olympics and the unfairness of the Olympics, and giving you some examples. But here we're gonna dive deep into specific examples and what is my final opinion about this whole situation where trans women can compete in female sports. All right. Now, let's get into the consequences of allowing biological males to compete against biological females. One of the most well-known cases is that of Fallon Fox, a transgender woman and MMA fighter who seriously injured several of her opponents. This woman stepped into the ring expecting a fair fight, but they ended up with broken bones and long-term injuries. This isn't just about winning or losing, it's about the safety of these athletes. These are the real-world consequences of ignoring biological differences. When we prioritize inclusivity without considering safety and fairness, we put female athletes at risk. And it's not just in MMA. This issue spans across all sports, including boxing, wrestling, and even track and field. Another high-profile example is Lia Thomas, a swimmer who competed on the men's team before transitioning to female. Before transitioning, Thomas was ranked around 462 in men's swimming. However, after transitioning and joining the women's team, she skyrocketed to first place in several events. This drastic change highlights the physical advantage that remained even after transition. In the men's category, Thomas was far from the top, but in the women's category, those physical advantages translated into dominance. This raises the question, is this fair to the biological female athletes who have trained their entire lives only to face competitors with inherent advantages? The numbers don't lie. Thomas's ranking tell the story of how significant these advantages can be. Recently, we saw this play out on the world's biggest stage, the Olympic Games. Two biological male athletes who were previously disqualified by the International Boxing Association, known as IBA, were allowed to compete in the women's boxing category. And as expected, they dominated the competition, taking home medals. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. Imagine training your entire life for this one moment, only to be beaten by someone who, despite transitioning, still has inherent physical advantages over you. The athletes who lost to these transgender athletes may have a civil case against the International Olympic Committee for allowing this to happen. The IBA had already recognized these advantages as unfair, but the IOC overruled them. This could be grounds for legal action, arguing that IOC failed to protect the integrity of the competition. Here's something that baffles me, and probably many of us as well. Why aren't feminist groups who have long fought for women's rights and equality outraged against these clear examples of prejudice and lack of fair play? Why is there silence for those who should be the loudest voices against this injustice? It's like we're living in a world where people are scared, even intimidated to speak the truth about these issues that hurt a huge segment of our population, our women. And that is something that I've been seeing when I post videos that have controversial issues. Not too many people want to get involved and listen to them, listen to these controversial topics, or want to comment. And I can see that in my past episode how little people wanted to actually touch it at all or comment, because they don't want to be seen as somebody hateful or somebody with prejudice or whatnot. But these are things that need to be open and not to be afraid of, and it's unbelievable how much people are afraid nowadays to speak their minds. So again, where are the marches, the protests, the outrage? It's almost as if protecting women's rights only matters when it's a certain narrative. And if you dare to question this, you're immediately labeled an intolerant or worse. Well, we need to have the courage to speak up and ask these questions. Women deserve fair play, and we must demand it on their behalf. Now, let's take this a step further. Why aren't we seeing transgender men who were born female competing in male-dominated sports like MMA or even boxing, the NFL? Think about that for a moment. Where are the stories of transgender men dominating in these physically demanding sports? The truth is, it's not happening. And that, my friends, is a huge red flag and shows the hypocrisy at play. If the argument is that gender identity should determine competition categories, then why don't we see transgender men stepping into the ring with male fighters? The reason is clear. Because the biological disadvantages in these cases are undeniable. This double standard only underscores the unfairness and inconsistency in how these issues are being handled across different sports. But the real question is, what does this mean for the future of female athletics? If we continue down this path, allowing biological males to compete against females, we could see a significant decline in women's sport. Why would young girls aspire to compete if they know they're stepping into an unfair fight? The very essence of competition is fairness, leveling the playing field so that the best athlete wins. If this agenda is allowed to persist, we risk destroying the fairness of these games, which could lead to fewer opportunities for women in sports, lower participation rates, and a loss of interest from fans who value fair competition. We must think about the long-term impact on future generation of female athletes. Even some of the greatest female athletes in the world have weighed in on this issue. Serena Williams, one of the best tennis players of all time, has openly stated that she wouldn't stand a chance against top male players. She's been very clear that men's and women's sports are different because of these inherent physical differences. If someone as dominant as Serena recognizes this, it's something we all need to consider seriously. When you have elite athletes like Serena acknowledging the gap between male and female competitors, it underscores the importance of maintaining fairness in women's sports. This isn't about diminishing anyone's identity or accomplishments. It's about ensuring that competition remains fair and that female athletes have a level playing field. That is just common sense, my friends. So, where do we go from here? It's clear that we need to have an open, honest conversations about how to include transgender athletes in a way that doesn't compromise the safety and fairness of female sports. The Olympic Committee and other governing bodies must reconsider their policies, not just for the sake of competition, but for the future of women athletics. So it is just common sense. It's not about politics. It's not about hysterics. It's not about whatever your agenda is, but it's about fair play, guys. I have said it many times before. There's no glory in fighting the weak. These people that are natural biological males who wish to transition to female athletes are mediocre at best or in the low range of the sport when they participated as a biological male. So, what is the main reason why they are doing this? And that's a question that hasn't been asked. Is it that you wish to compete as a female athlete because you feel as a female, or is it that you really want to compete versus women because it gives you an unfair advantage and you're just thinking about all the accolades and all the benefits and all the ego that brings becoming victorious in a sport where you have been mediocre all your life? So that is a real good question I'd like you guys to answer, all right? I want to hear what are your thoughts on this issue. Do you think it's fair for biological males to compete against females? Should the IOC face legal consequences for their decisions? Let's get this conversation started in the comments below. Remember, this isn't about hate. It's about fairness and the future of sports. Please remember, like, share, subscribe. But until next time, this is Coach Mario, owner and head coach of Warriors Pride Boxing Academy, with another episode of Inside the Ropes. This one is controversial, saying hasta la vista. God bless you all, and peace.